Another Gear Talk. This will actually, I'm not even kidding you, be the last Gear Talk with this current setup. I haven't packed anything back here yet or anything because I didn't want to do one last Gear Talk because after this, the rest of them will be in the new place and that'll be the third building ever since I started this series Gear Talks have happened in. And I'm not going to lie, it feels a little ominous inside of me. I don't know why, but just like weird. Anyway, we're talking about the Ostri Republic today. Now you might be thinking, why are we touching up on this? There's a lot to go over in Gears 5. The new operation will be coming out sooner or later. There's so much lore to go over. Gears Tactics is a thing now. Well, here's the thing. I started this channel with an opening video saying, like, Gear Talks and Gear Discussions. And my first video was ever on SERA, and it was a geography video. And I figured I never finished talking about all the geography of SERA. I haven't finished all of it yet. So I wanted to talk more about it. Ostri Republic, this is actually a big area too, because not really for like size-wise, but for the events. And you think like, okay, what happens here? This is where Aspho Fields happens. This is where Carlos Santiago dies. This is where Helena Stroud dies. This is where the 26th RTI gets their asses handed to them. They barely squeak out a win, and the 26th RTI was there just as a decoy, while Dom and Hoffman had to sneak over. I believe it was Aspho Point was the name of where they were. Other words, the opening scene in Gears 4. We're going to be touching on that too. Don't worry. This is where all of this happens. This is the place. This was former UIR territory taken into the COG and then lost to the Locusts and pretty much divided the COG because there was areas over on the other side that were cut off. And then 25 years later, nothing's been mentioned yet. So let's take a look at the Ostri Republic and talk about this area and kind of like the topography, the events, and just what's going on right now, and as of Gears 5 onward with the Ostri Republic. Now, the Ostri Republic was sided with the UIR, and this happened during the Pendulum Wars. Now, before the Pendulum Wars, it was a very technologically savvy country. It's very well known for being like one of the more, I don't want to say smarter areas, because again, Adam was Tyrion. He was over in Jacinto doing his thing. But what you really have to think about is that this place is where the Hammer of Dawn was pretty much the plans were created. Everything you needed to make the Hammer of Dawn came from this area. This is the place this world-destructive WMD was created. Well, not created, but the blueprints were created. Later on, the COG created it, and then we know what happened from there. But yeah, like before the Pendulum Wars started, this place was very well known for being some of the most technological minds there are, creating all of these ingenuitive and creative ideas, and it was very sought after because of that aspect. And during the Pendulum Wars, they ended up having not really heavily sided with the COG, not the COG, but the UIR. They weren't like, we're UIR to death, like a lot of UIR countries are. They were more as, we're with the UIR because that's our side, but that doesn't mean like if it ever hit the shan, we're not going to leave. They were there because they were a part of the team, but they understood like, hey, if the science project isn't getting done, I still have other options for other teams. That's kind of how it was. And towards the end of the Pendulum Wars, after Aspho Fields, after the COG got a hold of the plans for the Hammer of Dawn, that is what happened, essentially. After the Pendulum Wars was ended, between E-Day and the end of the Pendulum Wars, so pretty much from this point, they sided with the COG, along with their neighbor, Pelis, another country that's right next door to them. We'll be touching on them in a second, too, because of some genius these two countries have in common with their strategic planning. But yeah, it really did come down to, hey, they have our blueprints that we helped you guys create. The war is over and they have the ability to glass the planet. We're going to go ahead and side with the COG. And they said, Pelis, you want to come with? And Pelis was just, yeah, let's go ahead and get out of here. That's essentially how it was. Now, going a little further back, talking about Aspho Fields quick, because this is a very major thing that happened during the Pendulum Wars, possibly the largest battle that happened. I don't know how else to say, but it was a slaughter fest. Aside for the commandos like Dom and Hoffman, and when he was sending in his boys from I can't remember, the Himalayan region of the planet. I can't remember their name. I'll put it down here. But they're brought up a lot in the books. They're brought up later on in the comic series Hivebusters when you get one of the sons from I can't remember his name off the top of my head. You know what? Give me a second. I'm going to look that one up. All right, so it was the Pensang who were also there, and Bai Tak, who pretty much had his relatives shown off in the books, and also had, I believe, one of his grandchildren and one of his kids shown off in the Hivebusters comic as the pilot for the Hivebusters. Anyway, back on topic, talking about pretty much during Aspho Fields, pretty much the Pensang and the Commandos were the ones that went into the point and were stealthily getting the plans, while the 26th were getting everything handed to them and people dying as a decoy, making it think that this was an all-out attack when really they were stealing the plans. Now, the UIR kind of fell for it up until it turns out there was a spy that was in the point and everything, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, that's what actually happened. While in the game, it's shown like it was this big attack on the point. It wasn't. It was pretty much a very stealthy mission. Hoffman must have just been remembering everything a little bit crazier than it actually was, because how it actually happened was stealth. The 26 were the ones that were going through the major firefight, and that's where Carlos and Helena died, while Bai Tak he ended up drowning, getting Dom to freedom. So in the chopper. That's how it went. Now, like I said, once the plans were gone out of there and the COG won, that was pretty much the end of the war. It went on, I think, for one more year until the hammer was made, and that ended the stalemate. And then that's the point where pretty much Pellis and Ostri decided, you know what, we're going to join the COG. We're going to go with them because we made the thing. We know how deadly it is. It's going to glass the planet and kill us all. I'd rather be on their side. And that's how it went. While the other UIR were still having their own civil war, pretty much, we learned later on in 5 going on. But that's a story for when we get to the UIR side of things fully, instead of these countries that were just sided with them. Now, cut forward to when E-Day hits. Oh yeah, Ostri gets hit too. There's not a lot of places that aren't hit by the Locust. Ostri's hit, and it's hit pretty well. Not as hard as the UIR. The UIR got hit the hardest. They were wiped out on E-Day. Patty didn't even know people existed anymore from Grozny UIR in general, and he ended up helping out the COG because he thought his people were gone. No, Ostri didn't get it that hard, but they got hit pretty hard. In fact, 1 year later, they pretty much got overwhelmed and taken over. The last remnants of Ostri that we know of ended up going over to Pellis. They ended up retreating. They ended up getting out of there. Their premier, we'll call him Premier Dochenko, because I can't remember his name. I'll have it right here. But the premier, who was their head, along with a lot of the civilians, decided, we can't win here. We need to evacuate to Pellis. And Pellis is the neighboring country, which was also once UIR, that was COG. So they evacuated there. The biggest problem with this plan, this is the COG. This is Ostri, which is somewhat narrow by what we get a kind of depiction of, kind of like Peru. And here's Pellis. Understand, this gets lost. This is gone right here. This is COG territory. This is gone. This is Pellis. Do you see the problem with this picture? Everybody here is now locked behind enemy lines and surrounded, and this is the majority of the COG forces. Guess what? There's no helping Pellis at this point. Pellis gets lost very soon after because the COG aren't able to back them up. They're not able to send in pretty much backup to help them. In order to get to Pellis and help them, they have to battle through Locust pretty much infested territory, which I'll tell you right now, at the time 1 year after E-Day, was almost an impossible feat that wasn't believably done. And they would have to get to Pellis with wounded soldiers, possibly not many left, and then fight out and try and take back the surrounding area. It's not going to work. The entire COG territories were divided at that point. I believe Pellis was the only one over here, if you don't count the UIR up here that was believably gone for good. Yeah, that's all Locust, Pellis, COG. Palace didn't stand much of a chance. They really didn't think that one through, because even 1 year after, it is stated most of the territories are doing their own thing. They're like, no, at this point it's survival. The only country that was willing to listen to the main capital of the cog, pretty much the main Tyrian forces, the only one willing to listen to them were the South Islands. And the South Islands were amazing marksmen, but not a lot of soldiers that can't really do that much. That was all they had. Palace and Ostri were doing their own thing. Like, it blows my mind to think that this technologically savvy area that pretty much created the blueprints for the Hammer of Dawn, their main strategy, let's go the opposite way of the main forces and just get destroyed like months later. That's how it went. Oh my God. And that's the history of the Ostri. We don't know anything else that happens because of the fact that 25 years later, when like everything's done, V-Day has happened, the locusts are supposedly gone, we know nothing else. Like, I want to assume that Paddock probably roamed UIR former territories to see if there are any survivors or where he could set up a base of operations fully. But other than that, it's never referenced what happened to these other places. Like Ostri, we don't know. Palace, we don't know. And that's the thing. Like, Ostri, like, it played a major role during the Pendulum Wars, but the moment their technology was absorbed and they joined the side of the cog, the people who had their blueprints, yeah, they're like, we're going to be safe and cozy. Locusts come up a year later, they're gone. That's how it happens. And that's the history of the Ostri Republic. Now, talking about the topography and kind of the area and what it's kind of based off of, the Ostri Republic kind of seems like kind of a mid-European or even North American topography. For instance, you can notice if you look at the box art, not the box art, but the cover art for the Aspho Fields book with Marcus and Carlos you see there, they are in the Ostri Republic. That is the topography. If you look at how Hoffman remembered it, you can see pine trees. I believe it's coniferous trees. That's correct. I live in Minnesota. I should know that. But it's really more of like a North American, like you have America, like the United States, and then the northern area of America, or even around Maine. It seems like it's that type of topography, or at least what you would find for their vegetation. And even their climate, just like a mid-European, because you get that feeling with their winter, kind of how it is here in Minnesota, and also with their summers and everything, it seems like it becomes a bit more humid, which, again, Minnesota, we go through all 4 seasons very heavily, and that's just kind of how it feels. We don't get much information about the actual size and shape fully, but with how it makes it sound like everything's divided and how the country, or even the planet's somewhat set up with their countries, it does make it sound like it's a more narrow country on how it's placed and how it does cut off the rest of the countries. So that's about all we have for the Ostri Republic when it comes to their climate and everything like that. And that's really going to do it for the Ostri Republic. I mean, I can't really think of anything else involving Ostri that has anything to do with the rest of the story after the Pendulum Wars. Their leader, again, evacuated over to Palace, and Palace was soon lost. I don't think there were many survivors once Palace got taken over. Honestly, once Ostri gave up, Palace was gone. Again, very technologically savvy. I want to believe, honestly, for the Allfathers, when the COG was first formed. Well, no, that wouldn't be a thing because they side with the UIR. The Allfathers wouldn't come. The Allfathers were all the ones that created the COG. So they wouldn't be with the COG. They were originally with UIR. So that's interesting because I thought maybe because of how heavy technologically savvy they were, one of the Allfathers could have been from there, but it just wouldn't make sense because they weren't allied with the COG. So, you know what? Mini theory thrown out the window already. That's really going to do it, you guys. I mean, that's going to do this gear talk. The last time you'll see me in this apartment. I don't know how the new setup will be. I got to work on that. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening to this. If you're listening, I want to thank the Patreons for making things possible. I want to thank all of you guys, the viewers, for watching in general. It's really meant a lot, and I'm hoping for so many more videos in this new place. It just means a lot that you guys are still joining me for the journey, even as I literally move on. So thank you guys, sincerely, from the bottom of my heart. I'll see you guys in the next one. I swear I'll try and get them out more often. Have a great one, buds.